Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sandbox. Hey, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. There we go. That's much better. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sandbox. Phase 4 of the MCU is officially underway with WandaVision, and it seems like 2021 is going to be a steamroll of content from the studio with their next show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, set to premiere in only a couple of weeks. The MCU's first attempt at a TV show was mind-blowing and well above average, and with questions answered and mysteries solved, it's time to rank each episode from worst to best. Now, I'll say for the most part that the show just got better and better with each episode, but upon rewatch, favorites have been made and flaws have been noticed. So kicking off the list at number 9 is episode 1, filmed before a live studio audience. And right off the bat, Marvel throws us into the fray watching Wanda live her ideal life happily ever after with Vision, though for some reason they've been thrown back into the 1950s. This episode is very reminiscent of family sitcoms such as I Love Lucy and follows Wanda and Vision as they both try to remember what's so special about today's date.
Oh, Wanda, I'm incapable of forgetfulness. I remember everything. That's not an exaggeration. In fact, I'm incapable of exaggeration.
Well, then tell me what's so important about today's date.
What was the question again?
And I'll say that overall, this was a very warm beginning for the show. Now, I didn't find it to be laugh out loud funny, partly because I feel the writing was meant to be cheesy. I mean, it is Wanda writing the entire thing after all, but also partly because I just didn't want to miss a single beat. The episode brings about some questions as the tone darkens and becomes more mysterious, almost as if we've been thrown into the Twilight Zone, and the episode wraps up with a supposed sword agent taking notes of the broadcast, signaling that there is something suspicious going on. But next up at number 8 is episode 3, Now in Color. Wanda has become pregnant and magical hijinks are in full effect as Wanda deals with Braxton Hicks' contractions and a fast approaching labor. Geraldine reappears after being introduced in episode 2, but this time clearly fitting in with the 70s theme with her very colorful attire. And might I add, I love her choice of nautical pants. Overall, I think the story is pretty one note until the ending where it is revealed that Wanda just might be moving the lifeless corpse of Vision, but is using her powers to make him fit in and look real to her and the rest of Westview. Geraldine is also outed as a visitor when she name drops Ultron and is then kicked out of Westview and Wanda's Utopia by Wanda herself. It is then revealed that SWORD has set up base outside of some force field, which is revealed to be the hex that Wanda has implemented to keep people inside her vision, her WandaVision, if you will, and keep others out. Again, I think the episode is pretty solid, bringing an end to the 3-episode introduction and definitely increasing intrigue. I just think the plot overall was pretty average. But moving on to number 7 is episode 2, Don't Touch That Dial. Of the first 3 episodes, I definitely think this is the strongest, perfectly blending in the mysterious tones with the beloved sitcom format, with the haywire radio reaching out to Wanda, along with some color infesting Wanda's world. The story is also the funniest in my opinion, with a malfunctioning Vision after he accidentally swallows some gum, and his performance as a magician with Wanda as his assistant. This bewitched and Dick Van Dyke inspired episode definitely increased intrigue by a lot and proved that this MCU show could work as long as everything makes sense later on. But coming in at number 6 is episode 7, Breaking the Fourth Wall. Heavily inspired by The Office and Modern Family, this episode follows Wanda having a poor case of the Mondays with her hex magic on the fritz.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about. It's probably just a case of the Mondays.
And meanwhile, Vision is trying to make his way back to Wanda after the events of episode 6. I think for the most part, this episode nailed that 2000s sitcom vibe, but it was very much a slow burn, saving the high thrills for the end. That's right, it was Agatha all along, and for those of us that were able to guess this based on the foreshadowing throughout this show, we still had very little time to come to terms with it as we start to question what real witch magic could mean for the MCU. Meanwhile, outside of the Hex, Monica attempts to re-enter without being put under Wanda's spell. Her first attempt fails, but she is determined, and after going through the force field a third time, her powers are awoken, which allow her to see what's real and what's under a magical spell. Next up at number 5 is Episode 5, on a very special episode. Picking up after Episode 3 within the Hex, things fast forward to the 80s and Wanda's kids, Billy and Tommy, fast forward in the aging process. The show is starting to pick up its pace as well, with more clues coming to the surface, both within the Hex and outside it with Agent Wu, Monica, and Darcy, which has gotta be my new favorite minor character mashup within the MCU. The twins' dog Sparky dies, so they ask Wanda to bring him back, and Agnes is notably curious if Wanda is indeed able to do that. Vision as well becomes suspicious and accusatory of Wanda controlling everybody in Westview, so even they start to butt heads. And towards the end, Wanda exits the Hex to give them a final warning after they send in a drone, but Monica continues to fight for her, noting that if she is the problem, she also has to be the solution. The episode then ends with a huge cliffhanger with Pietro returning from the grave, except it's actually Quicksilver from the Fox Studios version of the X-Men, or at least the actor who portrayed him. Overall, this episode was full of the stuff that makes this show what it is. I feel like this is where the show really found its stride, and it did an excellent job at setting up the latter half of the season. But moving on to number 4 is Episode 4, We Interrupt This Program. And even though this rehashes many things we saw in the first few episodes, the return of Agent Wu and Monica Rambeau and Darcy Lewis made this MCU fanatic swoon. Some questions are answered, primarily the ones concerning what exactly is going on inside the Hex, but one question remains: why sitcoms and what's with the changing decades? This episode clues us in on what S.W.O.R.D. has been up to during the first 3 episodes, including how Monica got trapped inside, the colorful drone, the beekeeper, I hope he's okay, and the haywire radio. We also learn that Wanda is selectively broadcasting only what she deems fit, which raises many questions and hints at Wanda's power spike compared to previous films. All in all, this was just such an awesome episode that reinvigorated my interest for the show after episode 3 and prepped us for the next things to come. Plus, I'm a sucker for the snap and the blip, so any reference for those automatically gets extra brownie points. Before I share my top 3, don't forget to comment your ranking of the episodes and your overall thoughts for the show. Did you like it or did you love it? Let me know down below. Kicking off my top 3 is episode 9, the series finale. Overall, I think the answers we are given and the wrapping up of so many loose ends were satisfying enough. Vision has been separated from Wanda since episode 6, so getting to see their chemistry on screen again was a welcome delight, and seeing the Incredibles style team up with the family of supers was very fun. However, as a finale for an MCU project goes, I thought the action here was very lackluster. They decided to save like 95% of the action for the show for this last episode, and there wasn't really anything spectacular or super memorable about it. However, it did continue with the themes of grief and regret, and even got philosophical with Theseus's boat amongst the two Visions. They're both not the original Vision, and yet at the same time, they're both also Vision in their own ways. All in all, as butthurt as I was about Pietro not being the Quicksilver from the Fox's X-Men, I still found this episode to be very enjoyable. We get to see how smart Wanda can be, as well as how powerful she is in her final form as the Scarlet Witch. And I definitely can't wait to see her team up with the Sorcerer Supreme in Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness. However, above it at number 2 is episode 6, All New Halloween Spooktacular. I just think this episode was the best of both worlds. I love Halloween, and while the holiday itself wasn't the prime focus of the episode, we got to see our beloved heroes in their original costumes from the comics, including Wiccan and Speed and Quicksilver, with Fox version Pietro taking over. The episode is tons of fun, but also epic as we learn a little bit more about what's going on. We learn Hayward is tracking Vision inside of the Hex, and he has the lab guys try to extract the magic from the drone that Wanda brought back to them in the previous episode. And when Vision discovers the force field and tries to leave it, we learn just how tied to Wanda's world he is as he starts to disintegrate. That is until Wanda expands the perimeter of the Hex to save him, which also results in trapping Darcy and some other agents as the circus clowns we know they are.
We got the full clown car.
I think this episode was the best that WandaVision ever was when it was following that sitcom format. The Malcolm in the Middle style was absolutely perfect for this episode, especially with the twins and their Funkle Pietro. However, in the end, I like the next one just a little bit more. That's right, coming in at number 1 is episode 8, Previously On. And yes, while I can see some people not being as crazy about this episode since it is mainly exposition and it exists primarily to bring light to many secrets and mysteries just one episode before the big finale, I still think it was done in such an incredible way. It made sense of the episodes before it and perfectly set up the final showdown between Agatha and Wanda. We finally learn why Wanda chose sitcoms and why she chose to change decades with every episode. We learn more about her family and her life before she was a super, and we also learn a little bit more about her experimentation with Strucker, which is something I really wanted out of this show. We get the big twist about Hayward and Vision and how Wanda created the Hex in the first place. Thematically speaking and acting wise, this is hands down the strongest episode. Yes, it does lack that MCU action that we're hoping for towards the end of the show, but it's such a deep dive and an amazing exploration into Wanda's character. She is dealing with a whole lot of grief and we feel her pain and want her to get better even though she is technically the villain. Also, even though this episode has some of the biggest emotional payoffs, it also had some of the funniest jokes in the entire show. I hadn't laughed harder than when Agnes was complaining about young Pietro being so loud.
Wanda! I mean, we're right here.
Overall, this episode is what I wanted out of the show, and I couldn't be more pleased or impressed. Well, that's my list. Don't forget to share yours in the comments below and let me know what MCU show and or project are you looking forward to the most in 2021. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I will see you all next time.